General Richardson, I think I speak for the room when I start by saying thank you for your service. And I think you could tell this morning when you introduced yourself at the response that in this room of powerful pioneers, the respect for the mountain you have climbed is especially great. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of your daughter, Lauren, in the audience. Lauren, will you wave? Because service, as you all know, extends to the entire family. And more than in most cases, in your case, when you were getting ready, when we first encountered one another to lead your Black Hawk Brigade battalion, your husband, Jim, was leading Black Hawk, an Apache battalion. Right. And so you were the first husband and wife team to be going into combat together in the same theater. And you had a brother and a sister deploying at the same time, too. Right. So this really has been a family business. For those of us who don't wear the uniform every day, can you help us understand what changed when you went from colonel to general, got that star on your shoulder?
I think what changed is the ability to affect change even more. By the time you're in the Army, just like with any of your businesses or your companies, you have a lot of contacts. And so in the military, you have, obviously, it's the same thing, a lot of networking, a lot of relationships. And so it's the ability to be able to reach over to another division at another installation for something that we need, or how did you do this, or how did you do that, or do you have this part for a tank? We need it to fix it, you know, or something like that. Or to be able to call the Pentagon and know who to call in the Pentagon to get what you need. And so it's that strategic level, being able to dip down into the tactical level and know all the issues, and then be able to grasp and reach out to all your connections and your resources in the military, because you might be reaching over into another service as well. And so into the Air Force, into the Navy, into the Marine Corps, and all the networks, you know, the folks that you've met and served with. That you know to help you solve a problem or an issue that you might have in the Army.
So help us understand the organizational hierarchy. If you were to describe your job now in civilian terms, how would you do that?
So I'm the Deputy Commanding General for the 1st Cavalry Division. So a division in the Army is the Army's primary tactical war-fighting formation. I know that's a mouthful. So we have about anywhere from 22,000 to 25,000 soldiers. I'm not the commander, I'm the deputy commander. So the commander is a 2-star general, the division commander of the 1st Cavalry Division. His name is Major General Tony Irardi. And so he's like the CEO of our unit, if that explains that. And I'm like the COO. And so there's 2 of us that are 1-star generals. And I get the sustainment side, the support side. So I concentrate a lot on the sustainment, the readiness, the modernization, those kinds of things for the division. And then the other 1-star general focuses on the operations for the division.
We heard some amazing stories today from Ginny, from Ursula, about their upbringing. Yours, I found especially interesting. Yours was a family that went on a daily family run 365 days a year. Even Christmas, before the presents got opened. You had the indoor lap pool, the track, the basketball court, the motivational signs. Were those tiger parents? What was that about? What was that?
So actually, I felt great comfort when earlier we were asked to stand up if we were in sports in high school and college. And so I was one of many. And so a lot of ladies can relate to growing up in my particular case, growing up in my household. My father put himself through school with a track and football scholarship. So athletics were a big part. I was the oldest of 4 kids. And there were 3 girls. The youngest was a son. But I know after I was born, my father, he was expecting, he always tells the story, he thought that I was a boy coming out because my shoulders were really big and everything, and he was so excited. And then it was a girl. So the thing is that he didn't, what was neat is I don't think he treated us any differently. And the same aspirations that he had if he had had a son is, he started me in athletics very young. I remember going to the track team, the gymnastics team. And then it was swimming. I was taking swimming lessons, and I was pretty good. So that
And you were like doing chin-ups when you were like 6.
that
right?
was part of our workout routine. I had a chin-up bar in my doorway. Yes. And every once in a while, when my dad would come in to kiss all of us kids goodnight, he would bang his head on that. He would hit his head on the chin-up bar, and we'd just giggle. But anyway, so we started when Nautilus came out. I was 12 when we changed over to the machines and started working out on machines. But weight training was a really big part of the swimming regimen.
Let me say, when General Richardson won the Ironman competition of her unit, they changed the name to the Iron Person competition after that. So before you were in your current role, one of your earlier roles was running the Army's Operational Test Command. And many people in this room are always wrestling with incorporating new technology and how the speed of acquisition and testing works. Can you talk about how, I think we sometimes underestimate just how advanced and sophisticated military technology has become. And so that must have been a particular challenge for you.
For the Operational Test Command, what a great job that was. I really learned a lot in that organization, but I learned a lot about operational testing. There's such a thing called developmental testing, and for those folks that have to work through that in the acquisition world. So we did the operational part of it. It was actually at a point in the acquisition process where the piece of equipment is given to a unit, and we test to see whether the unit can actually do their mission with that new piece of equipment. And what things happen that we might need to change. Maybe the unit is on night operations and they have a device that's on their arm. Let's say that it shows their location of all the other soldiers in their unit on the ground. It's like a smartphone, for example. But then when they bump it, it lights up. You know, it's kind of like your cell phone at night, right? It lights up the whole room. So we find out things that we need to change. So for night operations, we might need to change that device. That device might be okay for what it is, but for night operations, we need to do something to fix that. So in terms of all the things with being in war for the last 10, 11 years, the Army has made great strides in the acquisition process to acquire things more quickly and to get things on the battlefield more quickly. And so we've made leaps and bounds ahead through our laborious acquisition process before then. Everything that's technologically advanced today that people use, smartphones, computers, iPads, those sorts of things, are all incorporated into our systems that we have in the Army now. These kids that are in the Army now are exactly what we need because they're smart on this stuff already, and so they can pick it up pretty quickly with the new equipment training that they'll receive on how to work these new systems.
We've seen such a transformation of warfare during these 10 years. So now, a keyboard is a weapon. If you fast forward 10 years from now, how different would a command like yours look, do you think, in the way it goes into battle?
Well, that's one of the things that we continually look at. Right now, we're looking at how do we shape the Army of 2020, is what we call it. We always have to be looking ahead. We always have to be thinking, what is our Army going to look like to be able to be the decisive force for our nation, right? Because there are some expectations that the American public has for its Army, right? And to be able to do and be able to protect this nation. And so we always have to be thinking ahead of what our enemy is going to look like, what the force is going to look like, what are we going to invest in terms of what our investment's going to be, what's our modernization going to be, what's our transformation going to be. We realized during this last war, we had to transform. We transformed our entire Army over the last 11 years while we were fighting war, right? So the biggest transformation that we've had in our United States Army since World War II, we used to be a division-based or a division-based Army, and we've changed to a brigade-based Army. So what does that mean to you? Well, before, we used to, in order to deploy a unit of about 5,000 soldiers, right, and its equipment, which is called a brigade, we used to have to deploy about 20,000 more, an entire division, in order to support that one brigade, right? How we have changed is that we can deploy that brigade now, 5,000 soldiers with its equipment, for a certain amount of time, and it will be dependent upon itself, right? We don't have to deploy 20,000 more. We also made these units look the same because we had units that were all different kinds of shapes, sizes, had different capabilities. And so when we were having to sustain the operational tempo, right, of having to deploy forces over years of time, you know, we weren't able to do it with the type forces because folks wanted, if a force left, they wanted the same thing to replace it. And we weren't able to do that. So we made our forces look the same as well. So huge transformation that we've been able to accomplish over the last 10, 11 years.
You know, I want to throw this open to questions, but I don't want to miss the opportunity since the issue of veterans' unemployment rates is such a serious one, and you have a room full of women who, amongst them, control many hundreds of thousands of jobs. If you could say one thing to them about what we owe to our veterans and what they can contribute to our companies, what would that be?
So veterans come as a trained and ready entity, really. And the age group that has the highest unemployment that's coming out of the service right now is ages 20 to 24. And that unemployment rate is about 21%. The national average is 14 for that same age group. So we have a lot of programs that are going on, but both the Army active with partnerships and partnering with private industry. Also, the White House has the Joining Forces program that's been in effect about a year, and the First Lady and Dr. Biden announced last month the 2,000 companies have hired or trained about 125,000 veterans or military spouses over the past year. The U.S. Chamber has a program as well. It's called Hire Heroes. And then also the Army has changed its transition policy. It used to be optional for soldiers to participate in that program, and so that has now been made mandatory. Every soldier has to go through it when they're getting out. At least they have to start at least 12 months out from when they're either separating or retiring from the service. So they can learn those skills, and obviously the skills are how to put a resume together, how to crosswalk what you have done in the service. I think a lot of times, my brother went through this when he got out of the Army as an attorney. He had a hard time just explaining what he did in the Army that made sense to a civilian legal firm. And he went through this. He went 5 to 6 months without getting a phone call on a job before. I had a friend who was a veteran and had gotten out and was an attorney and said, oh my gosh, his resume doesn't make sense to civilian companies. And so resume service to help you crosswalk what you've done to make sense to civilian employers. Also how to dress for success, how to interview, all those sorts of things. So we've stepped up that transition for our service members as well. But there's 130,000 soldiers that get out of the Army every year. 27,000 of those retire. But that's quite a large number for our veterans.
I have to ask one last question as I think about the first presidential debate tomorrow night. Here we are in year 11 of a war that neither candidate seems to be talking about with just weeks to go until Election Day. Is there a national conversation you wish we were having that we aren't?
I think the American people know that their military is at war. We have some definite things that are occurring right now with the drawdown in Iraq and that occurred, and then also now with Afghanistan. We know where that stands.
And I should say both General Richardson and her husband are likely to be deployed to Afghanistan next spring.
Next spring, summer. Mm-hmm. So I think at the end of the day, the American people will make the right decision. The United States Army and the military is here to support and follow their commander-in-chief and do what the American people want us to do. And so we're here and we're ready to do that.
Let me throw it open to the floor. Yes, ma'am.
Hang on. First of all, thank you so much for your service. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing? So, thank you very much for your service. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing inside the Army to help with the suicide issue?
Yes, so a lot of coaching, teaching, and training about suicides because this is, well, it's not a new problem in our society, you know, but we do have it we have it just like Our Army is just like our society. It's a cross-section of that. And so we have a lot of, in fact, we had a suicide awareness stand-down day. We actually took a day in the Army last week. And we devoted that entire day of the entire Army to suicide training and awareness. And so that day was dedicated to going over vignettes. I sat through about an hour and a half, 2-hour vignette where we had some actors that were on stage and acted out different situations. So situationally, they would stop what was occurring during that particular vignette, have the crowd participate, okay, what should we do now, right? And go through this vignette training, and then they would go ahead and act that out, and then describe whether that was a good thing or not. But the thing about the Army is the acronym ACE, and being able to ask one, are you thinking of committing suicide? Ask it. And we are taught how to ask it. You know, that might feel very uncomfortable for us to do that, but ask. The second one is to care, right? And the third one is to escort. And the escort is, okay, you may act like you care, or you may let me help you get some help. But the thing is the escort part is, I'm not going to leave your side, okay? I know you're hurting. I know you need some help. And I'm not going to let you go back to your house or your barracks or whatever. I'm going to stick with you, and we're going to go get you some help. And so that's the thing we want to talk about. And really what we've learned, too, is that folks that have been saved from that talk about it now during the training. And survivors of suicide, you know, that they were very much thinking about it or tried to do it, but they survived it, and thinking now that, thank goodness that it didn't occur and that it didn't happen. And so we incorporate those survivors into the training as well. So we're taking this head on. It's a very serious issue, and we take it very seriously, because this is America's sons and daughters, and we take that very, very seriously, and we want to make sure that we put the best foot forward and that we're getting the care and whatever these soldiers need.
It has been a long but very rich day with a lot for us to think about and talk about. So I will turn it over now to Patty, but thank you, General Richardson, for all that you've done.